Everyone wants data candy, but first they need their data vegetables. So says legendary data maven Jennifer Stirrup in this stirring conversation with Jeff Hainsworth of Insight Software, the company that brought you the ubiquitous ODBC and JDBC drivers. Learn how these workhorses of the data world can save you time, money, and headaches on this episode of Future Proof.
The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. Yet. Today's world teems with innovation. The nexus of hardware, software, and human ingenuity promises a revolution in possibilities. What does tomorrow look like? Witness Future Proof.
Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh here. And folks, it's so interesting. We've talked about this topic before, but I don't think we've ever had a show specifically dedicated to the drivers that are powering your data ecosystems. People just take this for granted. They know ODBC, JDBC. A lot of people don't know where that comes from. There's a company called Simba, and Simba is now part of a company called Insight Software. They have a whole collection of tools and technologies. Frankly, we're doing a series with them on these subjects. But the ODBC and JDBC drivers, they are the workhorses of the data industry. They connect your data to all kinds of systems. They allow you to do your analysis. That's the fun stuff. And today we're going to hear from my good friend Jennifer Stirrup of Data Relish and my other pal Jeff Hainsworth of Insight Software. And in a little webinar we just did a preview of this show where we talked about some of these topics. Jennifer had the funniest line I think I've heard in a good long while. And it really brings, I think, tremendous focus to our topic today. And she said basically, ODBC and JDBC, they help you get your data vegetables. Everybody wants the candy. They want the visuals and the graphics. Well, guess what? None of that stuff has any meaning unless there is the roots, if you will, of the truth, and that is your data vegetables. I gotta hand it to you, Jennifer. That's really funny. And you're in this industry, you're always tackling these issues. You joked the other day that you'll walk into the canteen and you'll see people drinking their coffee. You're like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, waiting for my Excel spreadsheet to load. That's a red flag, right, Jennifer?
Absolutely. I don't think people realize how much productivity is actually lost because people can't find the spreadsheets, they can't access their data, they can't open the spreadsheets. Now, Excel is over 30 years old and it's had, what, 3 billion users since then? That's a lot of really terrible spreadsheets. And people, I think, have problems accessing the data. And that's why they start to put things into Excel. And we know that that is all sorts of risks in there. It's not tested, it's not always secure. Don't get me wrong, I love Excel. But I really do think that is the data candy. And people really need their vegetables in place first.
Yeah, that's really funny. Data vegetables. Jeff Hainsworth, I'll throw it over to you to comment on. I think we've already found our theme of the show. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. It's interesting. So, in my history, I started as a software developer. I was a solution architect and consultant for years with Dundas Data Visualization. Now rolled into Logi Symphony. So we did analytics, dashboards, reports. And whenever we'd have a client, we kind of joke internally. It's like, all right, this is going really well. They're going to love the software. When is data going to kill this project? Or not kill it, but, get in the way. Right? And it's exactly what Jennifer's saying. You don't get those vegetables in order first. It can be a headache. Right. So making sure that that data prep is out of the way, teams, I don't think they realize a lot of the times, especially if you're kicking off like a big analytics style project, that, if your data is not ready and you haven't looked at it, that dashboard isn't going to give you anything useful. And real
Right.
time is a big piece of that as well. Right. Okay. I got data now, but it's a month old and the team has to spend a month to get the next cycle ready. That's another problem.
Right. Well, and you really hit on a point the other day, Jennifer. I'd like you to expound on this, the hidden costs, because people just get accustomed to doing things a certain way, and they don't realize that if you're not using a proper driver, you're adding a whole mountain of work to your workflow, and it's going to take time. It's going to cause headaches. You have to normalize. Can you kind of walk through just an example that you've seen about how time is just thrown out the window if you don't take the proper approach and use the right drivers?
It's a problem I see in very many organizations. One example I have in my head is I was dealing with an accountant and I was showing her just just some simple tricks about putting data together. And she spent 4 days out of 5 a week trying to export and import data and put it into Excel. And what she said to me was really insightful. She said, I didn't go to university and pay for my degree and invest all of this time and effort to come out and do something that actually isn't using my skill set. And I actually wonder to myself, how many people feel like that when they can't access data? Because it's not fulfilling for your teams. And I really think
Right.
that's a hidden cost. And if people are happy just importing data and exporting it again, what's happened there to that person? It seems to me that where did they lose that sort of initiative and that passion for data? Because I think the issue is data is so central to so many roles today. I think everyone's second career is really data analyst or data scientist or business
Wow.
intelligence because we are using data for so many things. So it's like a hidden second career for so many people. And this is why it's so important people have access to the data. If they don't have access to the data, they will start making it up. Now, that sounds really terrible, but I see this and I say, where did you get that data from? And they say, well, I took this data I had from 2 years ago and I kind of, I thought it's kind of changed a little bit since then. And I think this is an absolute data governance nightmare. So I think what's important about drivers as well is really about that data governance piece. It's the part that organizations aren't always comfortable talking about because they're not always very good at it. And I think that's
Hmm.
important as well. There's all sorts of hidden costs. And when I look at drivers, I don't think I've ever come across an organization that says, you know what, I'm really glad that we rolled our own and we did it our way. I don't think I've ever come across that. And I've been in the industry almost 30 years, and I just think it's about companies should stick to what they're good at, and that
Hmm.
is serving the customers, staying laser focused on that, and not getting too sidetracked with the IT company
Right.
issues. Because every company is an IT company, every company is a data company as well. So you have to get these things in right, particularly data. So
Yeah.
it's a topic I'm very passionate about. I could talk about that all day.
That, I
Jennifer,
mean,
I love what you said
go ahead.
about. Oh, sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. What you said about if they don't have access to the data, they start making it up. Does that sound like somebody else we know in the tech industry? Starting with an A, ending with an I. Don't have access to that data. It's just going to hallucinate an answer for you.
No.
I
Yeah.
definitely think that is a place, and I guess I keep coming back to AI because I think that's the next frontier here, right? Analytics, definitely, people use it all the time, but as we start getting more of these RAG applications starting getting out there, data access is going to be a big issue for them, and
Hmm.
I'd rather them not make up that data.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's a really,
100%.
go ahead. Yeah,
Oh,
you go
sorry,
ahead,
I'm
Jen.
just thinking 100% because a lot of these AI solutions are built on knowledge bases. And the knowledge base is made up of the data. Obviously, you've got business user input of how that knowledge base is constructed. But how important is it to get the data right? Because if you're training your AI on data that's faulty or people can't access the true data that they need, then AI is not worth anything, really. It's maybe a vanity project, which is a whole other topic. But it, people have to be confident in their AI. But if they're not confident in their data, how can they be confident in their AI? And I think that's something organizations don't always consider. And I think that's why drivers are helping to make data easy. If people are really focused on AI, you want to try and pick your battles. And I think that picking the right driver, getting access to the data is so important because it's one less battle you have to fight to try and really implement good AI because it's not as easy as everyone seems to think. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
For me, it's your point earlier about cost. I found very interesting, right? You mentioned that there's a cost to doing this. Well, there's also an opportunity cost to projects, right? And I see this a lot on the data and analytics side of things, right? Let's say your timeline looks like X, right? You've got 100%, maybe have 6 months to work on this. And the data connectivity and access and prep and schema mapping and performance optimization and everything, well, that took 5.5 months out of our 6 months. And then now we're out of time. So what happened to my dashboard? I essentially probably just threw self-service at it and said, go solve it yourself. Instead of just building that perfect, give me the answer I need, don't make me work for my data type of visualization solution that I think we really all aim for. And I'm not trying to say self-service is wrong in any way whatsoever, but it has its place for people who need it. I don't think it should be the short end of the stick because I ran out of time. And I think that's the opportunity cost of getting data wrong in a lot of cases. Just poor visualization. Didn't have time to focus on it.
That's true. I must admit, I've got a bit of an issue with the term self-service. This might be a bit controversial. And the reason for that is most companies, I think, most people don't actually want self-service. Coming back to our food analogy, what they want is silver platter. So, you go to a fancy restaurant and it's silver service. The waiter is not breathing on your food. He's got silver platter. He's serving your food just the way that you want it. And if you're not happy, then it gets sent back to the kitchen. And I think organizations want that with their data. I think self-service is a great term, but there's only a certain group of people in organizations that need it. And I think actually what data access does is help you to have silver platter and also self-service as well. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. That's the way I look at it.
I definitely have a thought. We went through this whole mind, exercise. Do we have self-service? Well, what we actually determined is it's not self-service people want. We called it silver service. It, as you suggested, served up on a silver platter. It's taking that self-service a little bit down the road, getting it in a better place, applying that governance and everything, which by the way, a driver gets you like 90% of the way there. So yeah, I'm 100% on board with what you're saying, Jennifer.
I love that silver service. And you make a really good point. Self-service sounds great, but you need a ton of data governance in place. It's like that old concept of simplicity from the outside actually has a lot of complexity underneath. And to make it simple, you really need to focus on getting everything right. And the self-service environment, it can be good for power users. I think that's the key is power users, you want them because they know how to responsibly get access to this data and responsibly play with it and do things that are useful. But to just rely on self-service for BI for the masses, I think that's the recipe for disaster, right, Jen?
Absolutely. I think organizations are realizing now how important the data is. Peter Drucker, the management guru you've probably came across, he said
Hmm.
an interesting point about culture eats strategy for breakfast. I would add to that and say actually bad data has your company for lunch because I really think that it's so important that organizations get that in place. And it's not just like an entity on its own. Data is part of the business ecosystem. And if people can't access it, it really is such a terrible thing for the organization, to be honest, because they're missing such a valuable part of what could make the organization successful. You don't get a real sense of what customers are telling you unless you have good access to the data. And ultimately,
Hmm.
if you're not hearing that voice of the customer in data, then you're not really serving the customers properly because you don't know what they're trying to tell you. So that's how customers talk to you, isn't it? It's really through the data. This is what they're buying from you. This is what they're saying about you online. And it's really about having your ear to the ground and listening to what the customers are actually telling you. I wonder, be interested in your thoughts on that, Jeff. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, all I can think of when you're talking about that is, how in technology everything kind of comes full circle. When I said the hallucinations kind of sound like AI, what you're describing in the self-service world also sounds like AI to me. Right? AI is a form of self-service. And people, what they're hoping for today is to be able to hook that right up to enterprise data and start asking questions. But you've got that issue of, do I have access to everything I need? Are there regulations in place? Is it just going to start making things up? So as I said, that's the new frontier for us. It's getting MCP access into, whatever, maybe you want to use Claude to talk to your well, in our case, our Simba system that talks to your data. Well, we can do all that with regulation in place. So we are actually providing that silver service for AI directly using us. So yeah, I think this is kind of the new frontier of self-service, taking it one step further beyond AI. Just give me whatever you want. To let's get this in a box a little bit, right? We want to make sure the output is not deterministic. It is deterministic. Sorry, we don't want non-deterministic outputs, which in BI is a huge problem as well, right? You don't want AI building your dashboards and your reports. It's kind of the same issue. You want to make sure that somebody has vetted this, they've thought it through, everything that's on the screen makes sense. The questions that AI can start gleaming out of your data is the same issue.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And as I'm thinking about it, MCP, so at the driver level, you have these architectures, right? You want to have the optimal architecture for a variety of reasons, but the driver, in a sense, is a set of guardrails. When you start talking about having guardrails for your system so that people don't, go off the rails, basically, and start making some crazy stuff up, that driver is, in a sense, that first line of defense for guardrails. What do you think about that, Jeff?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's something we maybe we'll talk about in our second segment, but there's a lot of benefits that come out of a driver that are essentially those guardrails that you're talking about.
And Jennifer, you want to comment on that too?
Yeah, I was just thinking about something you said. It's actually really insightful, I think, about self-service and DI having similar, people have got similar expectations of these. And it made me think that actually AI can be a great tool if it's used properly. But humans, we haven't ever really nailed dashboards properly, and we're hoping to do it AI. And it seems to me that people's expectations about AI, data, business intelligence are almost wild in terms of what they're expecting it to do. I'll give you an example. Someone complained to me and she said, I asked ChatGPT to write me an ebook about migraines and it was terrible. And I said, so what did you ask it to do? I said, well, I asked it to write me an ebook about migraines. And I said, okay, did you just tell it an audience or how long it was to be or a structure? No, they just typed in a one sentence, write me an ebook on migraines. And I think what we do is we have these wild expectations. But again, coming back to the earlier point, data vegetables are so important. The access is to be there. And we have to protect people from themselves. It's because they will do things like type in 5 words and
Right.
expect AI to magically do everything. It's not going to
That's
do
funny.
that. And
Yeah.
with business intelligence, we're still struggling to really get dashboards together that are robust and safe and really powerful and insightful and all these great things. And I say
Right.
that because I see this all the time. People haven't got the
Yeah.
building blocks in place.
You got to walk, crawl, walk, run, right, folks? And I'll just throw out real quick before we get into the weeds a bit, what I think is the ideal architecture. Yes, you want the driver at the base, ODBC, JDBC. You want your MCP protocol, and ideally knowledge graphs. I'm a big fan of knowledge graphs because as you use these AI engines, you have to understand they are incredibly broad and very unwieldy. And so the more context you give it, and this is kind of what you were talking about at the end of the last segment, Jennifer, the more context you give these engines, the better a job they're going to do. The more data, the more guardrails, the more contours you provide, the more granular it's going to get, and then they can work very, very well. But a lot of times context is just presumed. Like with your example of this person, oh, give me a book about migraines. Okay, you didn't give it anywhere near context. All that context is in your head, but what you need to do is express that explicitly to get you there. So with that as a foundation, maybe Jeff, I'll throw the mic over to you and kind of talk about your real world experience in this space and how it has kind of shaped your understanding. And again, this is all context. Everything we talk about on the show is de facto context, but we have a ton in our heads. The AI agents don't. Okay. And so you have to give them the context so they do their job. But Jeff, take it away.
Yeah, Jennifer, I would propose that the AI system got it right on that book about migraines. The book was intended to give you the migraine, though. It just didn't. Slight twist there
That's
as you're
funny.
reading it. Anyways, yeah, I did want to tell a quick story that I ran into that really kind of painted the picture of why this is important. So, in my past life, I was a consultant, I was a solution architect, and we were going up against a competitor and implementing dashboards and reports on top of Jira. So, I was kind of brought in at the end of the scenario, said down to two vendors. And what our team had suggested is, oh, don't worry, Jira has I think it was SQL, it may have been Postgres, doesn't matter. It has a standard database backend. We'll just connect to it via SQL and you'll have access to everything. Right? Well, we did that. We could connect to it. But what happened when we opened the covers? Well, everything, all the tables were basically stored as GUIDs. You couldn't read anything. So you'd have to like plow through data. You could spend months trying to find it. It's like, okay, this table's GYZ, blah, 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 blah. Let's see what's in it at least. Oh, it might have my customer information. Well, not from Jira, but you get it. The mapping was an absolute disaster. So the ease of use was a problem. So that was one issue. Yeah, we could query it. That was fine. Another issue was just a performance. So the way they had stored the data, it's all these tables and everything's, normal form, it's all over the place. It was designed for its own use. It wasn't designed for a BI tool or a human to come in and use those tables. So again, just I needed a map to use this thing. Long story short, we lost the deal because
Hmm.
our competitor had gone forward with a driver for Jira. And that driver solved like a whole whack of issues that, well, our product was better. Like we were hands down winning this. We were the favorite vendor. But because of that ease of use friction that happened with the data connector, had I gone through with a Simba driver, and honestly, they probably did, Simba wasn't part of the fold at the time, that we would have easily won that. But what does the driver give you? Gives you SQL querying. So if it's a REST API, it's a SaaS application, you can still talk to it via SQL, just like I did trying to go to the SQL backend. So same, that's great, right? You've got the schema discovery, so it can map it out for you and present tables that are now human readable. So I don't have to worry about all that. Where do I find anything? This is a disaster. I can't even speak to this thing, right? Metadata discovery, same deal. What does this column mean? What are these fields, right? We've got something called query pushdown. So we don't rely on the BI tool in this case to sort of join everything in memory. If I'm given table A, table B, and then the BI tool has to kind of do the work to mash them together, that's a performance problem. The driver can handle that. It can push all that work back down to the database. Let the database do what it's great at and serve up that performance. So that's another one. We have security integration out of the box. If I'm going around the back door into the SQL database, I have to have someone give me SQL security access, and that's a problem. That's potentially a backdoor. I don't want random users popping up in my, SQL management studio just so I can get data access there. So the driver can help that as well. We can go through. Finally, standardization, right? The driver would have worked with any BI tool because we all use a common interface, ODBC, which, by the way, Simba actually helped write the ODBC spec about 30 years ago with Microsoft. Now it's continued, a couple months later, billion desktops are using it. So you have used Simba. There's no way anybody here has avoided it.
Right.
It's just been behind the scenes. So yeah, long
That's
story
wild.
short, driver would have saved my life. We would have won the deal. Wish I had gone with it, but it is what
Wow.
it is, right? Good learning.
Well, and it is this universal translator, and Jen, I'll throw this over to you. That's really important in the data world because guess what? There are countless BI systems. There are all think about it. I remember 20 odd years ago, I was working at the Data Warehousing Institute and I interviewed a guy named Dr. Michael Stonebreaker. A lot of people know who he is, the godfather of the modern database. And he was pushing this mantra of one size does not fit all. And what he was talking about is back then everything was relational. Relational had won the day, but his point was, look, there are use cases for other database formats like Vertica, vertically oriented, because the columns are all the same, so they compress better. It's better for analytics. So depending upon the use case, you want a different kind of database. And since then, think about it. Back then, there were maybe 25 database technologies. Now there are like 300, I think, or 400 if you look at it. So having this driver serve as your universal translator, you're just solving all kinds of problems, expediting time to value because nobody wants to wrangle with unwieldy data. It's not a fun thing to do, and it's going to slow down your analysis. It's going to slow down everything, and then you're just not even going to try. And or people just fall into these habits of, well, I pull it into Excel and then I sort by this and then I sort by that and like, oh my God, and you're still alive. So the point is you want to grease those tracks, solve at this foundational level, right, Jennifer?
Yes, because one thing that's really important in an organization is a data translator, someone who can take the data and translate it to the business. What does it mean? And how does it apply to the business? And what decisions and guidance can the business take from the data? But to have a data translator, you do need that universal translator in place so that they can use the data translator needs to be able to expose the data and explain it to people. Now, what usually happens is when I'm collecting business requirements, people will say things like, I don't know what I can have in the data sources, so I don't know what I need. And what they tend to do is in these situations, they don't say it like that. What they say is, I'll have every column in every table for the last 5 years, and I want to be able to print it. And then I'll say, well, let's break that down a little bit. And what they're actually meaning is, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I want. And so give me everything and put it into Excel for me. And that's, I think, why organizations rely on spreadsheets so much, because they don't know what is in the databases. And organizations have probably got lots of databases all over the place. And I think what's important about the drivers is they offer that universal translator. So you can do a data dictionary for an organization and do like a business glossary. Now, I don't know about you, but so few organizations actually have a proper, robust data dictionary in place that they keep up to
Hmm.
date. So I'll often ask people, have you got a data dictionary? They'll say yes. So when did you last update it? And you can see people squirming. And it's true. So I think for people to translate that data into something meaningful for the business, to help them understand the requirements, because if they don't, they'll just say they want everything, and that's not ideal. Because if you can't prioritize what data you want, then not everything's red alert. You can't prioritize anything under those circumstances that will really serve and feed the business. So data vegetables again. Back to that. If they want the candy, we need vegetables in place. And that's where the data translator comes in, trying to help you to move through your courses, as it will.
Wow, that's really interesting stuff. I mean, and I'll just throw it back over to Jeff. You know, you talked about schema discovery, metadata discovery. Metadata really is the glue that holds all these different systems together. And to Jennifer's point about getting to what you want, metadata will help grease the tracks to get you there. I want to understand this set of data and match it with that set of data. How do you do that? That's metadata management, basically. So this gives you another window again into expediting the process and being able to sort through things instead of just having like a gigantic pile of Legos. You have this ability to kind of sift through and look at all the red ones, all the yellow ones, all the shapes of this kind, the shapes of that kind. I come to this idea because my daughter is doing a big Lego thing upstairs, and she went and the metadata was wrong at the store. It said $129. I went to the counter. It was 229. I'm like 229 for a giant Lego thing. I almost died. I was like, well, what am I going to do? I got to bite the bullet here. But the point is, it allows you, this driver, it gives you the functionality to very quickly move through and understand what do we have? Is it valuable? Is it not valuable? These are important decisions to make as you're moving forward trying to analyze your organization, right, Jeff?
Yeah, don't step on the Lego too. Don't step on my
Right, that's
metadata.
right.
Cause a
That's
problem.
right. Don't step on my metadata, please. That's
Yes.
funny.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it doesn't have to be a one-to-one thing, right? In your source database, it could have 50 tables because it has to be designed that way because it's good for the parent application. But a
Mm.
driver can just bring all that together. Maybe you're only serving up 10 tables. Maybe that's all I really need to do any real reporting on it. But the point is, we or somebody who's built the driver has taken the time, understands what actually we can get out of this data source, and just mapped it all nicely for you, right? So it's kind of like, here's your menu, sir. How would you like it?
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. You're expediting the process because you're helping people sort through things. Jennifer, that's really what you're doing in the whole process of building a dashboard or a report or some analysis is you're trying to sort through massive amounts, usually of relatively unwieldy data. And so to do that, you want all the assets at your disposal. You want all the tools at your disposal. You want to be able to quickly pivot and change your mind about something and not have that cause like 2, 3, 4 day delay in your workflow.